Hey everyone, I'm Tom and welcome to the channel. Today I'm going to be talking about Mercy, Tears of the Fallen by fellow booktuber and my friend Chance Dillon. Now, a few quick things to note here. Yes, this was an advanced reader copy. Chance was nice enough to send this to me early and I was able to read it because this book comes out later this week on July 20th. As I also just mentioned, I am friends with Chance. I'm in a Discord with him, been in a couple discussions with him, all this kind of stuff, right? So maybe there is some inherent bias here, but I'm going to do my best to just talk about the book and how I felt about it. I don't really think that I'm going to say anything that I wouldn't say to him on the positives or the negatives, all that fun stuff. But it is something that I like to just mention at the beginning of a video when, there's a somewhat personal relationship there with an author and I'm talking about their book. Now, very quickly, let's go ahead and talk about what this book is about. And I'm just going to read off the back of this book because I have found that the author is normally better at saying what their book is about briefly than I am myself. Mercy is for the fallen. A world shattered by war, a relic that can rewrite destiny, and two men, one hero, one exile, who might be the key to everything. Okay, just a real quick aside, I'm about to say the name of a character here, and I don't know if anybody else does this, but I am dyslexic, and so when I read characters' names, I actually make up completely random names a lot of times for what the name of the character is. So like, I'm pretty sure the way you pronounce this name is Avelist. I'm not 100% sure, but the entire time I read this book, I called him Ableist. Just because I could. And I just wanted to note that real quick. And I'm curious, let me know in the comments if you just randomly give characters names that are actually their names in books. Aveless Lightseeker was once a hero. His reward, betrayal and murder of all he held dear. Everlyn drinks to forget, but no amount of ale can quell his heart's desire to drive his blade through those that stole his future. A gifted minstrel carries a secret, a tale that binds the fallen hero and bitter exile together, a tale neither are ready to hear. Power and vengeance have a price, and in the world of the Tears of the Fallen, death follows from mercy. And then it also just notes here, for fans of Elden Ring, the Malazan Book of the Fallen, and Joe Abercrombie comes an epic series where blades clash, kingdoms fall, and fate is never as it seems. And I do want to say, you can definitely feel some of those influences here in this book when you read it. For me, I definitely felt a lot of Malazan influences because I don't have experience with Abercrombie and I have seen people play Elden Ring, but I don't personally have a lot of experience in Elden Ring. And there's definitely a feeling of Malazan in this world, in the aspect that people often talk about. Malazan, you are just thrown into this world and are expected to just kind of go with it and you'll figure it out as you go. And that is definitely an element to this book. I don't know if I would say it's to the same extent as a Malazan. I think this book, and maybe it just worked better for me, but I do think I was able to pick up the pieces that were laid out in front of me, and I think maybe they are laid out a little bit more directly than some of the stuff in Malazan is, but there's definitely that element of like, hey, we're just going to kind of hit the ground running and you're going to catch up as we go. And that is going to be something that works for some people and other people's not so much. And actually, in this book, I found myself enjoying that experience a lot more than I have in other series that have done this. I've had a very mixed experience with Malazan. I don't want to talk about Malazan too much. I do want to talk about this book, but I do just feel like they are good comparisons here. And in Malazan, I have found myself to both really enjoy that experience of not understanding everything and knowing that maybe at some point I'm going to get enough information. And I feel like in Malazan, maybe it's so much that I can't get all the information that I need to. And I think this book here actually really strikes a really great balance of like, okay, we're in this world and you're gonna figure things out at some point, but I feel like that information comes to you a little bit better. And I feel like I was able to put it together a lot more freely and just like, I feel like it flowed a lot better throughout this entire book. And so it was a really interesting thing for me personally to come in and be like, ooh, how am I going to feel about all these names, all these places, all this stuff with really no introduction, none of the like exposition where things are just really written out and explained to you. And I just think it was actually something that was really well done in this book. And I think it's something that that's the kind of thing that you like, you're going to really enjoy it here because you get a little bit more of that fulfillment to me as the story goes on and you start to put those puzzle pieces together and see how some of these things are going to converge. And you have those convergences, which I believe is a term I'm stealing straight from Malazan when, that's something that people in the Malazan world talk about a lot, is the convergences of power. And you do have some very similar aspects in this story here. So normally when I think of a story, I think of the plot, I think of the world building / magic system when it comes to fantasy, and then I think of the characters. So in here, let's go ahead and firstly talk about this world. I thought this was an extremely well done world and a lot was accomplished in just one book. And once again, that's without these like big exposition dumps that you would expect in maybe some other fantasy series where you are just, you meet a teacher or you have that like old sage who's like explaining everything to you. You don't get that here, right? But you do get enough pieces from mostly the politicking that ends up happening in here, and just some of the life experiences that characters have, that as you go throughout this world, you end up picking up the bits and pieces, and you know that there's obviously much bigger things that have happened that you kind of trust at some point you're going to understand more of. There is this hint, and this is where I'm going to talk about the magic a little bit, that there is maybe some greater magics than what some of the other characters are doing at the time. We kind of feel like there's this hierarchy of magic, and there are people who are maybe at a higher level that can do things that are different than other people, which is very interesting. We know that there's one of these people left, and all of these things. There's also some, I don't want to call it lower level magic, but like I'm just like tiers down in the power scaling of like influencing what you can do. And I would have liked a little bit more. It is one thing with the magic system, I maybe would have liked a little bit more hand holding, but I do think it was cool. And sometimes that's what matters most, that the magic is cool. And I will say I found that the magic was cool multiple times here. It has different applications. There's different things that different people can do based on what kind of magic they are able to pull from, and all kinds of things. And I'm sure more of that will come as the series goes on. But sometimes magic just needs to be cool. And I do think that this is a cool magic system, and cool things are going to come from it. And just more on the world building side, this is obviously a very vast world, and we do get some different perspectives and things, and there's a lot of political kind of conflict that is bubbling up here as the story begins. And I just think it's, once again, very well done. And as the story progresses, we do learn more and more about further out into the world. And man, it left me, it was one of those ones where it left me with wanting more, but giving me just enough to be satisfied for one book. So I think it really struck that really great balance. Now, plot, it can be such a subjective thing, right? Plot can mean, well, we all know what plot means, but for me, the plot in this book, it has a few different branches, and we're following a few different things. And I don't want to say it's a direct linear path, but it really kind of is. We kind of have a we are going to this location kind of trope for what I'm going to call our main party as we go throughout it. And I enjoyed it. It was one of those ones where I'm good to just sit with this group of people and go on this journey with them, which brings me to characters, which is really, to me, where this book shined the most. I absolutely adored pretty much every single character in here that you were supposed to, and was intrigued by so many different characters. I told Chance this actually, but there is like a romantic subplot that happens very, very early on in this book, and I think it is some of the best romance that I have read in a fantasy story in a really, really long time. I think it's just absolutely done. I think there's a really great mentorship and like apprenticeship kind of thing that goes on as well, and that idea is explored definitely a few different times with a few different characters, and I really enjoyed just all of these characters. And it's almost that Motley Crue, found family kind of thing, that it builds slowly, because at first I wasn't, overly attached to a lot of these characters, but man, it just keeps building and building and building until you get to the point that you really are endeared to these characters. You only want good things to happen for them. And it only took to probably about the halfway point for me to really get invested in a lot of these characters. I will say there is one character in particular who is just like chef's kiss, exactly what I'm looking for in a certain character. I don't want to say because I don't want to spoil anything, but that character I did get attached to very, very quickly. So I have been overly positive in this review, and that is because this book is currently sitting at my 5th favorite book that I have read this year. This was a smashing success for me, and I hope it will be for you. I know there are others who have read this and have also really enjoyed it. I will say, a lot of these things that I like may be things that you don't like, and that is totally okay. If some of the positives that I have said about the ambiguous world building, but those puzzle pieces that you get to put together, the very strong characters, I don't know how people don't like really strong characters, but maybe it's the more basic plot structure, straightforward, even though it's not that simple. I'm making it sound simple, but there's definitely some fun political maneuvering that is going on in this story. Maybe some of that doesn't sound as great for you, and that's okay. But this is a book that I definitely would recommend to people who are maybe a little bit more seasoned in fantasy. I'm not sure if I'd give this to somebody who hasn't read any fantasy, because there are definitely tropes, and just the world building is big, and you need to process some of the things that are going on. And I think the biggest thing you could say, if you want all of the answers right away, this is not going to give that to you, but I trust completely that by the end of the series, we're going to get enough of those answers that really make you happy. So that is my, once again, pretty overall very positive experience with this book. I really did have a great time with it. I would highly recommend you pick it up, like I said, if you are somebody who has dabbled enough into fantasy and this is not your first go around. But that is all for me, and remember, read what you want when you want.